apologizing that I'll have to leave almost immediately after this because I do have one or two commitments here, and then I have to go to Lagos today. And let me say that I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of His Eminence Sultan Muhammad Saad Abubakar, the Sultan of Sokoto. We have a standing agreement with the Sultan that whenever I represent myself and him, I'll make it very clear that everything that I say that is normal and straightforward is from the Sultan, and anything that is controversial is from the Emir of Kano. So you have a formula for separating what is from the Sultan and what is from me, you know, what I say. Let me begin by thanking God for the life of Sheikh Lemu and praying for the repose of Hajia Aisha Lemu. May Allah have mercy on her. And praying for IET and the organizations it has spawned for God's continued guidance and protection. 50 years is not by any means a short lifespan, especially when, according to the hadith, the life of this ummah anyway is 60s and 70s. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked once, who is the best among human beings? And he said, Man tala umuruhu wa hasuna amaluh. He whose life has been elongated and whose works are good. And he was asked, who is the worst of human beings? And he said, Man tala umuruhu wa khabufa amaluh. He who has long life and commits bad deeds. So to have been given long life and the benefit of spending that life in the service of Islam is, by the testimony of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest mercy that Allah can confer on one, and we thank God for this family and what they have done. For me personally, I'd like to make a few comments based on what I heard today. Starting with Nur all through to Uthman Bugaji, because I do think that a number of these themes are interrelated. And maybe one way to start is to look at what IET is doing in terms of Sharia intelligence. And to really stress the point that the greatest vacuum in jurisprudence in Nigeria is the lack of understanding of usul and maqasid and qawaid. And this lack of understanding has affected the ability of jurisprudence to move this community into the 21st century. Understanding what are the changing priorities of the ummah as time changes. Even what are the priorities of da'wah. I mean, to be honest, if you are faced with all these problems of out-of-school children, malnutrition, drug abuse, is the priority of the da'i today to be talking about things like Salatul Fatihi and Tariqah? Is that really what our priority is? So, understanding that da'wah itself needs to be positioned within maqasid, masalih al-amma, mafasid al-amma. What are the priorities? What is more important? What do you stress? These are all parts of the science of usul. But also qawaid. Because look, we're in the 21st century. And we are in Africa, we're not in Arabia. Every single day, we are faced with new questions, with new developments that we cannot find exact replicas of in the past, in different geographies or different historical times. These are called nawazil. And scholars of Nigeria of 2020 need to be able to answer questions that they are faced with in Nigeria in 2020. And you need the tools to answer those questions. So I'll give you a simple example about how the lack of knowledge of Qawaid becomes a problem. We have just codified a Muslim family law in Kano. And one of the issues that's very controversial is the question of how do you regulate the stage at which a girl gets married? And you'll have scholars that will tell you there is no hadith, there is no ayah, there is no scholar that said you cannot marry a girl at the age of 3 or 4 or 5. And it is true, they might say that. And then you try to tell them that there is, in the field of qawaid, something called taqyid al-mubah, regulating that which is lawful. And to give an example that we can all understand, we all have freedom of movement. You have the freedom to enter your car and to drive your car. You have complete freedom. It is permissible. Yet someone says to you, if you see a red light, you must stop. He has not stopped you from driving, but he has regulated driving, because if you keep going through those red lights, you can kill someone, you can cause accidents, you can damage society. That is the principle of taqyid al-mubah. If you say wait until a girl has reached a certain stage before you marry her, you have not stopped marriage, you have not stopped the sunnah, you have simply regulated a certain element of it that has been shown to cause harm to society at this point in time. I've seen all the harms associated with all these. But having that conversation is very, very difficult because of you go into the field of qawaid. And even when you go to that, the difference between making that which is lawful impermissible, or making that which is unlawful permissible, and whether you need darura, and these are all issues in qawaid. So, my first point is this Sharia intelligence is the most important intellectual component that we lack as an ummah, and I congratulate IET for focusing on it, and I hope and pray that it is something that we'll all pick up on. Now, because we do not understand usul, because we don't understand qawaid, we end up misdefining and misunderstanding our priorities. And we have to be very honest with ourselves. I'm an economist, and I always talk economics, and we look at the numbers, and we look at poverty. If you look at all the poverty indices in the world today, you find that in southwest Nigeria, the incidence of poverty is 20%. In the northwest, it is 80%. The northeast, it's 80%. Why is it that the poorest parts of this country are the Muslim parts? Why is it that in a state that started Sharia in 1999, and we just heard the opening verses today, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. This is the very first verse revealed in the Quran. How come that the state that started Sharia is not the one that is the most educated state? In fact, how come that in that state in 2017, only 24 children got 5 credits in secondary school? How do we define Sharia? How do we define Islam? Illiteracy? Malnutrition? Children on the streets? We have to ask ourselves. And we can't ask those questions until we begin to understand through usul that you have to live in this world well in order to serve Allah for the hereafter. For Islam to prosper, we need educated Muslims. We need Muslims that are not begging. We need Muslims who are standing on their feet. Believe me, if poverty continues in the north, Islam will disappear from the north. The Prophet said, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqri. Allah, I seek refuge